Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'd like to welcome Mr. John Knotts, who is a business consultant, and he's going to try to straighten me out today. So before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been doing business coaching and consulting for over 25 years. Started in the Air Force as an internal coach and consultant in a career field called Manpower and Quality. And did that for 11 years, worked with a major consulting firm here in San Antonio, Texas, Booz Allen Hamilton, which they're out of McLean in Virginia. And I've done it internally with the Fortune 100 company USAA here in San Antonio for 7 years. Been working for myself, had my own business since I retired out of the Air Force, but I've been working for myself and supporting an organization called Gemba Academy, doing a lot of coaching and consulting with them. And it's a really exciting space that I didn't really realize because I went into the Air Force as a cop.
Oh, boy.
And and I learned about this thing called process improvement, and I absolutely loved it and got involved in it back in 1990 and had the opportunity to make it my career, and now it's a passion. I love to help people in business improve.
Well, thank you for your service. We definitely appreciate that here.
Yeah, I know.
I guess you've seen some of the posts that I've put up.
Oh, I have.
Working with the
I've been
veterans.
following you for a little while, ever since Ben had his podcast with you, his interview.
Ben is awesome. I like Ben. So when it comes to something like what I do, which is podcasting, I guess that's kind of a newer field for you, but you can help me to improve what I'm doing.
I believe so. I guess the proof will be in the pudding.
We're going to give it a shot today.
All right.
One of the biggest things that I've run across, number one, what I do is not exactly the most popular. People like the more controversial stuff, pop culture, video games, that kind of thing. I've interviewed a lot of really great, positive people that have just so much inspirational content to what they do, and I noticed that I even have more subscribers than they do, and I'm like, they blow me out of the water. So if they're not making it, I think, how in the world am I going to make it? And if I haven't gotten outside help, I don't know how I'd be even where I'm at right now. And to try to do this on my own is just virtually impossible.
But you're doing it.
I'm doing it.
When you decided that you were going to get into doing this, why did you want to do that?
Well, first, when I first got into podcasting, which was, 5-6 years ago, it started out as a paranormal thing. I was really big into that, and it was just to do something outside of just investigating. I got to meet different people that were in the field and try to get advice from people who were like on television and things like that. And I met oh my gosh, let me think of his name. Hold on. Adrian Paul. Okay. I don't know if you know who Adrian Paul is.
No.
Back in the 90s, there was a TV show of the movie Highlander, but it was, made for television.
Mm-hmm.
And Adrian Paul was playing the part of Highlander.
Okay.
And he's been on several different things, but I mean, he's a remarkable person. And got to talking to him at a convention. And how do you not ask somebody like that to be on your show? and I tried to incorporate that into a paranormal show, which was not very easy to do, to say the least. But he inspired me to reach out and talk to people that could inspire others, and so that's kind of how that got kicked off. And I mean, honestly, when I first started doing it, I didn't expect to make anything off of it. It was just to help others that might want to watch what I'm doing. And quite honestly, it started out, I was lucky if I got 10, 15 people to watch my content. And I ended up disabled, and I'm retired now.
Mhm.
I wanted to really do this in a more serious way, to really put emphasis into the show and to try to reach out and help others. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, I definitely want to make money at this because I don't want to live off the government the rest of my life. So that's my little story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it's interesting. So there are a few universal laws that exist in the world today. And one of them is the law of energy. And so my wife and I, we own a horse farm, equestrian business right here north of San Antonio. It's one of the largest equestrian facilities here. We have 40 horses on property. We have we board horses. We teach both English and Western riding. And one of the things that we do here, I told you 21 years in the Air Force. My wife's father and her brother both were 30-year veterans in the Air Force. And when we started this, we wanted to give back.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we had seen is the power of equitherapy with veterans that are dealing with post-traumatic stress. So we said, we're going to do that. We didn't know anything about it, but we're going to do that. And we went up to a couple of facilities and we saw what they did. We watched their operation and the differences that they made in a matter of like an hour with people. So we started running the program here. It's called Reckless Rangers Veterans Equitherapy. It's completely free for any veteran that's dealing with post-traumatic stress. And what I discovered with this law of energy, and I think there's correlations with what you were looking at and that kind of where you are now, is that horses feel energy that we give off. They sense it like dogs. Okay. Everybody knows dogs and being therapy dogs and everything, how powerful that is. The difference between a dog and a horse is a dog is a carnivore and a horse is a herbivore. Dogs are in packs that hunt. Horses are in herds that protect each other, because regardless how big a horse is, they're the biggest scaredy cats in the world. But the thing is their sensing ability is quite amazing. And I've really learned a lot about human energy. And if you think about paranormal activity, the concepts behind that, it really is just residual energy.
Oh yeah.
It's, we have an energy and people can sense it. Some people are really in tune to that. And what I've seen is horses are really in tune to that. So I see this transition in your business of moving from this concept of you're really interested in this idea to I want to deliver the energy of positive thoughts. I mean, you call it the vibe. I mean, let's just, put that into perspective here. So it's really important in a business to understand why you do something and what your end goal is, because money comes, it happens. And when you're following the passion, when you're doing something that is great for other people, which, oh, by the way, that's another universal law, the law of reciprocity. When you're doing something that's great for people, then greatness comes back to you. If you expect it, then no, it doesn't always happen, but it will happen. And, is it just, I'll just throw this out there. I mean, I listened to your interview with Ben Albert,
Mm-hmm.
and I just thought to myself, when you had basically said that you had heard over the interviews, you'd heard different tips and you implemented some of them and they've helped and some haven't. And I was just like, you know what? I want to get on this call and I want to talk to you and maybe I can help you. And through that, maybe we can help other people.
Well, that would be awesome. I mean, for the most part, I mean, yes, I would. I really want to be successful, and it's not so much for the money. It's just after the things that I've been through in my life, and then I see some that are not. I hate to put it this way, but maybe not as strong as I am. That there's hope out there. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm only strong because of the people that I've surrounded myself with,
That's a
and
really good point.
and I know that there's people out there that are lonely. I mean, we've seen it through this whole lockdown.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
I mean, people that were already feeling isolated or even further isolated, and I have to be careful with what I say here, but people that have ended themselves.
Yeah.
And I
One of the
don't
reasons why we started our program.
exactly, which is why I work with the veterans
Yep.
and trying to start that program. Um, I lost my brother and my father and one of my best friends to this, and I don't want to see that happen to somebody else. So that's, I mean, that is my ultimate goal: is find people that can inspire others, motivate them, give them alternatives, give them hope. So back to you.
So now defining that is very powerful. Understanding that why and really, putting that in words, writing that down and saying, okay, this is my mantra. This is the reason why I get on this mic every day. This is the reason why I do these shows. Because people will get inspired by that. And inspired people are going to follow you because you're constantly bringing inspiration. You're now addressing specifically, these are the people that I want. This is my audience. Now I know exactly what to look for. And soon people will want to be on this show. They'll be asking you, like I asked you, hey, can I come on your show? Hopefully we can inspire people to find the thing that they never find. There's so many people that do not understand their purpose.
It's crazy how I get emails, people asking to be on my show, or they'll come on my social media and ask. And I can't tell you what kind of feeling that is
Mm-hmm.
to know, even if all I've reached is a couple of people, somebody listened and said, you know what, I'd like to get in on this. That puts me on top of the world. And I'll be honest with you, there are days that I have a hard time getting out of bed myself. And then to come in here and to do this on a daily basis, there are days I don't feel like it, but I know that there's somebody out there that could benefit, and I need to be here. I don't have to be, but I need to be.
I post every day on LinkedIn, most
Mhm.
social media, but it starts at LinkedIn and it spreads outward. And I work with people that are, they're like, man, I see you post every single day and I really would like to do this, which is a lot of work. Oh, by the way.
Yeah.
But I do this kind of challenge. So it's a 60-day challenge. I don't charge anybody for this thing. And they say they want to do it. So I take them through 60 days of learning how to post every day and how to leverage the different tools. And I see people that they get involved in social media and they don't see what's coming back to them. They're not getting any business out of it. They're not, something they were expecting
Mhm.
wasn't happening. And what you said about there might be one person that is inspired by this show, That's what I discover. So I've been doing this for a long time, and over time you start to get the messages from other people. Hey, I read your posts every day. I love what you write about. Keep it up. And you don't get that right away. People don't ever do that. But when you're a
Sure.
voice, people listen. There's somebody out there listening. And the question is, how do you then get it to expand to other people?
Exactly.
So what would you say you've done to expand the audience? In what ways?
You know, I, I don't know. I find it hard to say what it is that I've done. I've had to reach out and ask for help. There's a guy that I actually pay that helps to promote my show, and it helps quite a bit, but I mean, still not to the level that I'd like to see it. I'm terrible about posting on social media. I'm not. I am not a fan of social media, but I mean, I get its worth. I know that there's algorithms and all that. I don't understand all that stuff. For the most part, I try to be consistent, but with what I do, it's not easy to keep a special time set aside for, oh, this is when I'm going to do it. It's usually about 7 or 8 o'clock at night when I'm able to get to it. And I mean, other than just continuously asking for help and reaching out, I don't know. I'm learning
So
as I'm going along.
so let me throw a concept at you.
Okay.
How many interviews have you done?
Gosh, like 500 and something.
Okay, great. You got 500 people. When this interview is done and you're ready to post it, do you send it to all 500 of those people?
No, I usually just send it to the person that I interviewed.
Hmm. What if you turned all of the people that came on your show? So I appreciate you allowing me to come on your show and share
Mhm.
my ideas with people. Okay. And I know everybody that comes on your show is happy to be on your show. They appreciate that because you let them be on your show. That's important.
Mm.
You know how many people get asked to be on a podcast? Very few. It's very little. So when you ask somebody, hey, would you be on my show? Or they ask if I can be on your show because I want to get my word out, I want to sell my book, I want to promote my business, whatever it is, you have given them something for free. So
Yeah.
the opportunity is every time that you do a podcast, that's one more person that you can share that to and just say, hey, thanks for being on my show. We just had another episode and I wanted to share it with you. And if you would go out to YouTube, like it, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, and post it on social media. I'd appreciate it. Let me know how things are going.
Hmm.
Do you think that would work?
I'm not sure. I mean, to be honest with you, I get emails from people from the past, and as many emails as I get on a daily basis, I usually don't have time to look at them, much less give it my full attention. And I mean, I know that sounds bad, but gosh, you should see the emails that I get on a daily basis. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's business. Business ends up being a lot of email. Trust me, I know. I'm the owner of a business and I work for another company and and I own a horse farm and I probably have like 15 email addresses that I have to monitor. It's
Hmm.
crazy. But it's, like that's one of the things, like if you could see value in something like that, that's one of the things where you say, oh, I'm going to get a virtual assistant to do this for me. And that's their job. It's just like every time that I do this, we're going to send this out. And it can be very repetitive. All you're doing is you're adding the next person to the email list that you have. Of course, there's an effort now because you've got 500 people you got to go back and find. So you got to get all those email addresses. That's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
but that's okay. I mean, like, look at the worth in that, because now what you're creating is an army of people that are supporting you. You may not be good at social media, but I am. You send it to me, and I send it out to the 18,000 people that are following me on LinkedIn. That's huge. Anytime somebody
Yeah.
shares your stuff, that's a positive step. And you might get maybe 25% of them might do it. And if anybody watching this right now, you need to share this. You need to share this to everybody. I mean, that's what it's all about, because that's like the ultimate compliment to anybody. We can't necessarily pay money to things, but when somebody takes the time like you do to share this kind of information that is going to help other people, then why aren't people sharing it around? Because they're not being asked?
More than likely.
Yeah. So let's start asking. I mean, that would be my first recommendation. You have already some valuable information. All the people that you've interviewed, all of their email addresses, all of the connections. I'll tell you something that I do here in San Antonio. So, do you like whiskey?
I don't drink.
Okay. I love whiskey.
I used to love whiskey more than I should have loved whiskey, which
Okay.
is why I don't drink anymore.
Sometimes I may love it more than I should have, but I love whiskey and I love cigars. And a friend of mine and I were sitting down over lunch, and he was changing jobs. He was a vice president in a bank here locally, and he was like, "I'm gonna go do something different. I'm not really sure what I want to do." And we were sitting there talking about whiskey and cigars because we often talk about that. And I said, "Why don't we just create some kind of business networking group around drinking whiskey and smoking cigars? I wonder if that would be a good idea." And he thought, well, it sounds like a good idea. I don't know if I want to do it. And I was like, all right, well, I'm driving home from that lunch. And I said, the hell with it. I'm just going to start this group. It's called Whiskey Business and Cigars. Yeah. So we started it pre-COVID, July prior to COVID. So July 29th or 2019. And we held our first event. I don't know if you've ever been to a business networking event, but it tends to be a bunch of people running around shoving business cards in everybody's face and then walking out the door. And I have literally seen this one lady who interrupts people, and she was shoving a business card in front of people's face and then walking to the next person, not even saying anything. I remember talking to this guy, and she did it to us, and he looked at the card and he threw it on the ground. But this is the whole idea of networking is really about building a relationship, getting to know people, asking them why their name is Coyote. you know You're like, I want to know this. It's part of your story, right?
Right, right.
But when we created this, what we created was an environment that was so relaxed that people just wanted to have a conversation, because you don't like pound whiskey, or at least most people don't. They shot it back in the day, but nowadays we sip whiskey, we smoke a cigar. A cigar takes like an hour to smoke. And what happened was amazing. First, we had 7 people show up at the first event. Nobody left. They
Wow.
stayed for the entire time that we had allotted. The second event that we held was at a humidor, a local humidor here. And it runs from 6 to 9, 2 hours. One person left. And then the people who run the humidor came outside and they said, "Hey, you guys got to leave. We're closing." And somebody walked up to me and said, "Where's the after party?"
Wow.
Now you're going to love this one. We were over at Stoneworks. So they have whiskey for sale, and they allow you to smoke cigars on the patio, which is not common. So that's
Right.
cool. So we went to a couple of Stoneworks, and we went to the Stoneworks over at the Rim here in San Antonio. And we're sitting there. It is 10:30 at night. They're closing at 11. There's still 8 of us sitting around a table, all in different businesses. And you know what they came up with? An idea to start a podcast.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it about whiskey and cigars?
No, it wasn't. Although one of the guys that kind of helped me put all this together, John Wood, the guy that I was talking to over lunch, he keeps saying, we need to do a podcast on this. We need to do a podcast. We can drink whiskey and smoke cigars while we're doing it. I'm like, yeah, okay. But what I learned is that people, they want to be around something that invigorates them. It gives them purpose. And then what I found was by using Eventbrite and collecting information, basic information, email addresses and names, I now have over 350 members.
Wow.
And I'm a business coach, and they want to come and talk about business. That's a pretty good thing. So every time I do something, I write for Forbes through the Forbes Coaches Council. I write for a magazine called Authority 5.0 out of Australia, which is for pretty much anybody that has a lot of knowledge and wants to share it with the world. And I also write for Gemba Academy in their blog on process improvement. And whenever I write and I get published on something, I share it with the group. You know, there's 350 people I get to share it with. And that's what I would recommend with you is use the people around you to share what's going on.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could reach out to a few people that I know right away that would be more than willing to help. And don't get me wrong, when they see my posts,
Mm-hmm.
they will repost it, share it, that kind of thing. And I mean, they're not the most famous people in the world, but they have some fame to their name. So that helps a little.
Yeah.
I get a few extra subscribers here and there, but I mean, other than starting what you just said, that would, I guess, would be my first step. I'm not
Well, and that's
very.
one of the things you said that the reason why there are LinkedIn engagement groups, I don't know if you heard that term before, but basically these groups that everybody supports everybody else's post in that group.
Oh,
So
okay.
they like it, they comment on it. And I think it's frowned upon somewhat with LinkedIn, although it gets a lot of activity on LinkedIn. So they might actually look at it as a good thing too. But the concept behind it is that if people don't see what you're posting, then they'll never comment on it. So these people, they get together and like, hey, I like what you say. You like what I say. So let's share our posts back and forth so that we can make sure that we engage with each other. And as a matter of fact, about 6 months ago, maybe a little bit more, it was beginning of the year, somewhere around there, LinkedIn added this thing called the notification bell to your profile.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is following you or they're connected to you, they will see this little bell on your profile in the top. And if they click on it, for the most part, it's not perfect, but for the most part, you will get a notification whenever they post, which is pretty cool.
I did not know that.
That way, people who are kind of active on the platform, they just have to go into their notifications now and they can see who posts. And that's, for you, I know you get a lot of messages and stuff like that. You probably get a little bit overwhelmed at times. But if there are specific people that you think you should be following and supporting them because they're supporting you, that's a great way to do it.
Well, look, I'm terrible at social media and all that. I just learned what hashtags were 2 years ago. I'd see that when I would get on Instagram or something, like, what the heck is this? Why is everybody always doing it? Number what?
Well, so the hashtag is nothing but a filing system. That's all it is created to do, so that anytime that you put a hashtag on something, it's essentially like you're labeling it for filing. You're tagging it in such a way so that when you click on that hashtag, all of the posts that are associated that has that hashtag in it will show up in a, in the file. So it's kind of like a database management system, but on Instagram, it became a money thing because there became hashtag communities. And in LinkedIn used to be bigger, but there's hashtag communities as well that you can follow. And people actually would make money when their hashtag was being followed by a lot of people. It was a money-making opportunity. So like people have turned it. It's hashtags are used on practically all social media sites, not all of them, but practically all. But they only have real, truly power in certain areas. So you talked about you get a couple of subscribers or something like that. Do you actually like collect any data around that? Do you like every day, do you look at how many subscribers you have from the day before? Do you look at your post, like this podcast that we did had a really, strong increase of subscribers or likes. Why?
That's another good question. Why did this one get more attention? Because I'll tell you what, I've had some really incredible guests on my show that I thought, wow, this one's gonna get a lot of views, and people are really gonna dig this person. Hardly nothing. And then I'd get that one that I'm like, well, I committed to this, so I need to post it, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people are watching it. I'm like, why is this one getting more attention than this one? It's, I don't know. And I do go back, especially with my YouTube, and I see where most of my views are coming from, the age group, if they're male or female, and what have you. And so I try to keep that in mind when I'm doing this. Surprisingly, 25 to 34-year-olds are the most that watch my videos, which I thought that'd be old farts like me, but
Well, there is a certain thing called a modern elder. I don't know if you've heard that term before.
I guess.
But they're the wise people out there. The younger generation sometimes wants to listen to them.
I wish my children were part of that.
Oh, I can't feel you on that one because I don't have any kids, but
oh Lordy. But
well, that's
no,
when
go ahead.
when you post and you share what you're doing, do you have a very specific process that you always follow? You always do it the same way?
I pretty much do it the same way
Okay.
now. I did it a whole different way when I first started doing it. And then somebody tell me, oh, you're doing this wrong. You need to do this. So I change and I do this. I'm like, I'm not getting any more attention than I was before. And they're like, oh, well, you got to do this too. Well, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? And if anyway, I got to where I picked what I thought would be the best hashtags. I give my little tagline, the hashtags, and then the link to my video. And that's pretty much how I've done it for the last year, I guess. What do you think?
Well, it's important to have a very structured process for how that you go about listing something. And you can look at, when you don't, you can look at the differences between podcasts and, wow, where did all this get? Well, when did I post it? What time? And what was going on? Because the time that you post really does matter. I can see it. If I post, so typically I'm posting around 7 in the morning, 6, 7 in the morning. And I write it usually in that morning. I write that post. And I can see if I wait to like between 8 and 10, I don't nearly get the visibility. But if you're doing something in the afternoon, you post around 4 o'clock, it seems to have a really good impact. And when I think about why, well, people are waking up between 5 and 7 o'clock to get ready to go to work. And what's one of the first things they do? Let me grab my phone and let me check the social media, see what's going on. And it's opportunity for something to show up in a news feed. When you're coming home from work, you're getting off of work, one of the first things people tend to do is, hey, because I've been working all day long, hey, let me check my social media feed and see what's going on in the world. So those are two times that I think, and it always depends on who really is listening, right? Where you are in the world and what's going on. But I think that has a big impact on visibility when it comes to stuff like that.
See,
when things get posted.
this is my problem, is that I mean, I can keep that up for a little bit, but the way my schedule is, and my schedule works around other people's schedule when it comes to doing interviews, because some people can't interview until after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that a lot of mine are during the day, but it varies. I don't have a specific time every day that I do an interview. I will say this: when I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm in here working on editing and that kind of thing, so I can get it uploaded, and I can set a schedule when my video pops up.
I was like going to say that.
And so I've designated 11:30 every day. That's when my video is coming up. And if I was to say, oh, well, 4 o'clock is a good time to post, I might be able to do that for 2 or 3 days, and then I have an interview at that time. Yeah. And that makes it difficult to do the social media thing. Usually my downtime is about 7 or 8, and then I can dedicate my time to doing social media. I try to be consistent with it, but even that's difficult.
Well, and it's regardless of what I just said, like when I post, it doesn't mean that I always post that time, because I try. That's what I try to do. And I post every day, so I post Saturdays and Sundays too. And sometimes you can't do it, and I do it all myself. So I don't have a virtual assistant. Nobody comments on my stuff but me. Nobody likes other people's stuff but me. So that's my thing.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be difficult about this. That's just the way my schedule is.
The whole idea, reason why I wanted to have this conversation is to give you ideas, to make, like, oh, let me think about that. It's not like you're going to run out and make some changes tomorrow. That's not how business really works. Right. We sit there and we stew on it for a little bit and go, maybe I should try something different here. Let me give it and like you said, like there's a few people that that you might be able to start sharing the future videos with, the future podcasts with. So that's a start. Just creating a small group and say, hey, I'm starting to do this, and I got some advice, and you'll see it on this video. And I decided I'd pick some key people that I think are really, supportive, and it's one step at a time.
Oh yeah. And I'm always open to suggestions. I'm not a hard head that I've got to do it this way and it's going to be this way from now on. If somebody has a better idea, I am more than glad to try to implement it. And I'm not the brightest bulb on the tree, but I can take some advice, and sometimes I have to say, okay, how do you do this? And you have to show me. You might have to show me a couple of times, because but I'm willing to do it.
One of the biggest things that I see in business is that people want help, but they don't want it to change what they do every day. So when you say, well, try this, I always get like I already do this, and it's, they start going in the excuse track. Yeah. And I get it. I understand it, because I have routines just like everybody else has routines, and I don't want them disrupted. So it's about, and this is, I mean, probably this is like the most important thing out of a message of your podcast, is that we're all faced with changes. Some of
Mhm.
them are forced upon us, and some of them we have to decide to make ourselves. And we have suggestions coming at us from all over the place. I mean, if you go out on anything, any media, you read a book, which, you know, I got a ton of them, you know, you're going to get a lot of advice.
Mhm.
And I think there's a lot of people that they're reading the book and they're like, yeah, but this is great, but
And I don't want to be that person.
well, and we are like, that's human nature, just because we're comfortable.
Mhm.
And I forgot who it was that said it, but you know, like you got to do something every day that makes you, you know, that scares you, makes you uncomfortable. And
Like
it's
talk to my mother-in-law. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, but that's what business is kind of all about. Because if you get you know, complacent in doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is important from a standard work perspective, you know,
Mhm.
we want to standardize what we do. But the problem is we become complacent in that, and then we don't want to break out of that. We don't want to try something new, and then we get stuck. So we always have to be looking at, okay, am I solid in my process? Is everything repeatable? And I'm at this structure and I can measure it and I can see what's going on. That's why I asked you the questions about, you know, do you measure the effectiveness of what you're doing? Because then when you make a change, you can see, did that have an effect?
Right.
Because if it was a negative effect or no effect, well, then I might just discard that and throw it away. But the thing is that we have to be willing to constantly push ourselves out of that envelope.
And you talk about changes. I love the 70s and I was willing to accept the change of the 80s, but then when the 90s came, I'm like, no, let's go back.
uh,
And now look at it.
I don't know what it is now.
Jeez, 2023. You
Yeah,
know, I
right around the corner.
when we were kids, I used to think, man, the year 2000 is so far away, it's never going to get here. And now it's nearly 23 years past it. I'm going, what the heck happened?
What's scary is when you look back at, you know, like something that you think just happened a few years ago, and you're just like, wow, you know, like you're doing the math, 10,
Mm-hmm.
20, 30, whoa, 30 years. What in the world?
I know what we watched or looking at a post yesterday where somebody had posted about Stevie Ray Vaughan died on this date in 1990, and I'm like, that was 32 years ago. What the heck?
Yeah. I went in the Air Force in 1988.
Wow,
And I was
man,
already 22 years old.
man. So you
So,
you got me by 4 years then.
yeah. Well, you know, I hope that this is helpful.
Oh yeah, it definitely is. That's why I like having people like come on because there's something that I've missed along the way, and people try to give their best advice, and sometimes they don't always think of things and some that like you've thought of. The whole email thing, I want to look further into that. But how do you generate these emails? I mean, do I have to sit there and send out 500 emails every day?
So there are systems like MailChimp that, as long as you stay within a certain number of emails, I think it's 1,000, you can send out the emails to people. I personally, I like to have the emails on my computer.
Hmm.
So I like ownership of stuff. It's one of the problems with these media platforms is that you don't own everything that's out there. And if they decide to shut off your account or just shut themselves down, you're everything that you've worked for is gone.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of keep that stuff for myself. 300 email addresses is not that hard to manage. When it comes to what do you send, well, your format will pretty much be the same every time you post, right? Just a little bit of information that you would probably put on, onto YouTube, or, it's just a cut and paste. And here's the stuff I'm going to slap in about this interview, and it's still got the same call to action. This is what I'm asking from you. If and always leave the door open, like, is there anything new in your life that you'd like to talk about? Reach out to me, and maybe we'll get you back on the show. And because people like to kind of come back. I know I do this CEO chat podcast with a guy named Al Cini, and every time we're on there, he's like, "We're gonna have you back in the next quarter," and I'm like, "Well, I don't want to be the only person that you have on the show," but I have done their show like 3 or 4 times now. So,
Wow.
but it's like, people can come back, they can share more, they can share what's going on, especially when it's motivating to other people.
It is kind of cool when somebody says, "Hey, can I come back on the show?" Shoot, yeah, come on back. I'll
Yeah.
have you on. I'd like to have my content as full as possible. So in case, get sick or whatever, like I did with COVID for a week, I have content ready to go. You never know what's gonna come up.
Yeah.
Surgeries, there's funerals, all kinds of stuff. Grandkids got a baseball game and I got to drive all the way back to Houston. Yeah,
Yep. You always want to get the extra content, and
Mhm.
I've got a couple of published books out. One's on Amazon. Well, 2 of them's on Amazon. One's a fiction book. But I always tell people, like, I'm working on like 16 to 20 different books. You
Wow.
always got to have something boiling in the background. And
Mm.
it's just the next thing. Hope to publish 2 books this year. That's our goal. I work with a nonprofit organization called Executive Book Review.
Mhm.
And what we do is, the faculty members and the board members, they'll read a book, kind of a businessy book, professional development, leadership, stuff like that. They'll read the book, and then we present the book to the membership that shows up for whatever event we're going to
Mm.
have. And then we facilitate discussion around that book on the concepts. You don't have to read the book, which is wonderful. You don't have to know anything about the book. As a matter of fact, you come out of there and you're like, that sounds like the stupidest book in the world. I'm not going to buy it. Now you know. But, there's a lot of times where I come away and I'm like, man, I need to get that book. So I have a lot of books that I haven't read back here. It's like all this stuff in the center shelf. It tends to be like, okay, I need to read that.
Oh my gosh, I've had so many great authors that come on my show and they'll send me a book, and I've read a few of them, but I'm a slow reader, and I'm
Yeah.
one that sometimes I have to go back and read the same sentence 2 or 3 times before it gets in my head. And so I read them, but it takes me a while to get to them, and I have piles of them that I need to
Yeah.
go back and read. Like, how do you find time to
I'm a
sit down
very
and
slow
read?
reader too, because I take notes.
Mhm.
I really try to. I have a very structured approach to. I've worked with a lot of CEOs that are very proud of the number of books they read every year. Oh, I read 52 books last year. I want to read 60 books this year. Like,
Mm.
okay, what'd you do with that knowledge? And that's where I get the blank stare. Like, not a whole lot. I just went to the next book. And I've worked in these organizations with these people where it's like, they have the next great idea. Well, I was just
Mhm.
reading this book yesterday, and yeah, awesome ideas in it. Well, let's do that here. And then 2 weeks later, I just read this book, and it becomes the management flavor of the day. And people, they get sick and tired of that, and then they don't do anything that you're recommending. But when I sit down with a book with a notepad just like this, and when I see something, I'm like, wow, that's a really good quote. I'll write the quote. If I'm like, oh, that's something really want to do that, I write it down and I put a little action next to it, like, do this. If it's something like, that's interesting, I like to learn more. So I'll put a research next to it and I'll write it down.
Mm.
And then at the end of a chapter or a section or whatever, however they laid it out, what I do is I take all of that stuff and I say, okay, what am I going to do with it? And I'm structured with planning too. So I say, well, all the things that are strategic and I want to do something with them in my future, I'm going to put them in my plan. All the stuff I want to research, I usually do it right then because I keep it fresh in my mind. I'm like, oh, I want to learn more about this, which means I slow down on reading that book, especially when it has a lot of cool things that are like, oh, I got to learn more about that. But that's very structured. So it takes me a while to read a book. I'll a couple, 3 months before I get a book done.
Oh, I believe you. I've got it in the back of my head, and I don't know why I have this fear that I'm going to be in a trivia situation, and I have to know what the book or the TV show that I've watched. What's the answer? I got to know it, so that's why I go back and I'll read the same thing over and over again until I get it in my brain. And I've only watched the Office all the way through 14 times, and I'm started again because I know I've forgotten something, and I don't even have time to sit and watch it.
My wife hates it when we're watching a movie and there'll be a line in it that I remember, and I'll just quote the line before they say it, and she just looks at me and she's like, "Why? How do you even do that?"
I'll do that, and then when the situation is right, I'll say, yeah, that's what she said.
Exactly.
The wife's like, why do you do this to me?
Because I've watched The Office like 16 times.
Right. So do you have a website?
It is www.crosscutter.com. It's CROSSCTR.com. All of my publications, this podcast and all the other podcasts I've been on are all shared out there.
Oh, nice.
Almost everything is free. There's like two books for sale. So that's a pretty good deal. And I'm very active on LinkedIn.
I love LinkedIn.
Very active on it. I engage with a lot of people, and I'm the kind of guy who's gonna like poke the bear a little bit. Like
Gotcha.
I'm not the one who's like, oh, great post. No, I would be like, let's challenge this. And there are some people that love it and some people who block me. But I kind of push the envelope, and I love it when people push the envelope because it gives us stuff to talk about. It's meaty discussion, and that's important.
It is important to keep the dialogue open. There's too many people that are trying to just close any kind of communications down completely. It's ridiculous.
Well, they just want to be heard. They don't want to have a conversation.
That's it.
They just want to tell you what to do, how to think. Don't respond to me. Like, yeah, I want you to like tell me how great my post is and like it, but I'm not going to comment back on you. I'm just going to move on to the next thing I'm going to tell you. I don't operate that way. I don't like it. I'll always ask a question. And I'll allow for, I may not like the answers I'm getting, but I asked the question. You got to start curious.
Well, I'll admit there was a time when I would put out an opinion, and that's all I wanted to do was put out the opinion. And when somebody would say something back, I'm like, you want to make that point, make it on your own wall, not on mine. And my cousin's like, that's not fair. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. You're right. It's not fair. If I can put out my opinion, somebody else should be allowed to put out their opinion. And whether I like it or not, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't really engage on social media. I put out my posts about my videos, or whoever's been on my show. If they've got something they wanted me to help promote, I'll put those posts out. I try to stay away from politics and all that, but you know how it is. Sometimes you can't help it. Yeah. But I try to stay away from it.
Well, sometimes there's some really good lessons in the world that are wrapped up in politics. But well, hopefully this was really helpful. That's what the intention was, and hopefully it's really helpful to the people that are listening to this right now.
Yes, for sure. What was you're on LinkedIn or you're on Facebook and all that?
I'm on all of the social media platforms, but I'm active on Twitter, Facebook. There's one called BizFluence, which is new. They've only been around for about a year and a half. I was one of their founding members. I was in there in the very beginning, and they're trying to build. I never got onto what's the talk radio type? Can't remember the name of it.
Don't give me to lying.
I actually joined it, but I've never got involved in it. I am on Instagram and I watch TikTok a lot because it's always interesting having a horse farm. We're very visual. And so I'm always looking at the stuff that they're doing. There's a lot of horse people out there. And I'm always looking at the way, it's very innovative people with the way that they do these videos. It's creating a different culture in the world. It's kind of very interesting. But most people can reach me on Facebook or on LinkedIn pretty easily.
And you board horses and I've bored people. So, you know.
I like that.
I appreciate you coming on, man. Really. And
thanks for the opportunity.
Anytime, really. Reach out. I'd love to have you back on. And,
well, you know, if you run into something and you're just like, boy, I'd really like this advice and I think other people might like it, let's set something up.
I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah. I have this thing called Ask Me Anything. So, you know, I may not know the answer, but I will tell you I don't know it, and then we'll work it out together.
Well, I really do appreciate your time. And also, all you out there, I appreciate your time as well. So if you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I hope you'll come back. Please subscribe. To those that are regular to the channel, thank you so much for your support. It's because of you that I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network